Have you ever, like, reached the absolute pinnacle of your career? The exact spot you spent, I don't know, decades bleeding and sweating to reach?
Right, the place where you sacrificed your relationships and your peace of mind along the way.
Exactly. Only to look around and realize you might be climbing the wrong mountain
I
entirely.
mean, that has to be a terrifying kind of vertigo. You have the success, you have this incredible view, but the foundation underneath it all just feels fundamentally hollow.
Yeah, you're standing on top of the world, but you feel completely empty.
Yeah.
And that vertigo is exactly what we are unpacking today.
It's a really fascinating deep dive into a very specific kind of crisis.
It really is. So we are looking at this incredible conversation that captures this existential crisis in real time. We've got this sprawling dialogue between veteran broadcaster Tucker Carlson and Shawn Ryan.
And for those who don't know, Ryan is a former Navy SEAL and CIA contractor who completely pivoted his life to become this mega podcaster.
Right. We're tracing his radical journey today. So this is a guy who spent his life hunting external global corruption, only to realize he had to confront his own internal demons.
Yeah, he ended up radically unplugging from modern society just to save his own sanity.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to look at this source material, not just as a celebrity interview, but as a window into a massive cultural shift. We're going to partially observe these viewpoints because, well, they really highlight a broader societal burnout.
Right. What makes this source so compelling is how perfectly it mirrors this massive information overload we're all feeling. There's this profound distrust of historic institutions right now.
Oh, totally. People are just on this frantic search for something real in a digital world that feels, increasingly manufactured.
Yeah, so to really understand Shawn Ryan's massive life shift, we kind of have to start where his disillusionment began.
Right.
It was this realization that the institutions he quite literally risked his life to serve were, at least in his view, broken beyond repair.
And for someone in elite special operations, your trust in your chain of command is your entire world. It's not like a corporate job where, a bad boss just means you miss a quarterly target.
Exactly. A failure in the chain of command means your friends come home in boxes. So if that trust cracks, your entire worldview just shatters.
And there is this highly specific story Ryan brings up that caused that foundational crack for him. He recounts an interview he did on his own show with a former Delta Force colonel named Pete Blabber.
The Iraq War intelligence story, that one is wild.
It's so crazy. So they were digging into the intelligence leading up to the invasion. And, we all remember the atmosphere back then.
Right. The State Department, specifically under Colin Powell, went to the United Nations with all this satellite imagery.
Yeah, and they claimed this imagery definitively showed a mobile Scud missile launcher, plus a weapons of mass destruction factory complete with this massive air filtration system on the roof.
And didn't they say there were elite sentry guards outside too?
Yes. Elite sentry guards standing outside. And this is a classic high-stakes intelligence briefing. But you have to understand how this works mechanically, right?
Yeah, satellite imagery isn't some crystal clear 4K photograph. It's often grainy. It relies heavily on shadows, thermal signatures, and just overall context.
Exactly. When an intelligence analyst is told to look for a WMD facility, human confirmation bias naturally kicks in.
Right, they start seeing what they are culturally and politically primed to see. Like a long shadow suddenly becomes a missile tube.
A square structure becomes a chemical lab. But Pete Blabber and his elite Delta operators, they didn't just rely on the satellite photos. They actually went to investigate the ground truth.
They physically went to the site.
Yeah, they went to this heavily guarded, highly classified site out in the desert. And what they found was a completely different reality.
I bet.
The mobile Scud launcher. It was literally a giant water truck, which, let's be honest, you kind of need in the middle of a desert.
Right, water's pretty important there.
Right.
And what about the massive WMD air filtration system?
It was a standard, albeit very large, desert air conditioner.
Oh, wow. But wait, what about the sentry guards? They specifically mentioned elite guards.
That was the most absurd part. The supposed elite military guards standing at attention outside this weapons facility. It was literally just a guy taking a bathroom break in the sand.
You're kidding. That was the sentry.
That was the sentry. And yet, despite the guys on the ground waving a massive red flag and saying, hey, this is just a water truck, the invasion launched anyway.
What's fascinating here is the psychological impact of that gap. The gap between the official narrative being sold to the public and the ground truth experienced by the operators.
It's devastating.
Completely. For Ryan, hearing this firsthand from a Delta Force colonel wasn't just, a realization that the government makes mistakes. Anyone can make a mistake.
Right. He perceived this as a deliberate institutional lie. The institutional facade doesn't just crack in that moment. It completely drops.
And it wasn't an isolated incident for him either. The conversation really piles onto this disillusionment.
Yet Ryan talks about other things like fake SEAL team awards being handed out just to build up certain officers' careers.
Oh, and he brings up the immense controversy surrounding the Eddie Gallagher case too, right?
Yeah, and even deleted drone footage from a Blackwater incident to cover up tactical mistakes. He admits to Carlson that accumulating all these instances made him feel genuinely ashamed.
Ashamed to have been part of an institution he now views as deeply unethical. That is the core of the existential freefall right there.
It really is. When the very thing that gave you your identity, being a Navy SEAL, being the tip of the spear becomes a source of shame, you're left completely untethered.
You start questioning not just the military, but every single overarching structure in society. I mean, if the military is lying, what about the politicians? What about the media? What about the banks?
Which flows seamlessly into their political perspective.
Right.
Ryan and Carlson share this deep-seated belief that the entire U.S. political system is basically a theatrical charade.
Right. They use the term uniparty.
Exactly. And regardless of where you fall on the political spectrum, understanding this deep bipartisan cynicism is just so crucial for grasping modern voter apathy.
Yeah, they specifically point to the dynamic between Donald Trump and the political establishment. Many people saw Trump as the ultimate outsider, the guy throwing a wrench in the machine.
But Ryan and Carlson discuss how even he ended up aligning with figures like Chuck Schumer on various massive spending bills.
For them, that was the ultimate proof that there is no political solution to the country's problems because it's all just one giant unified machine protecting its own interests.
I hear that, but I want to introduce a little pushback here. Are we perhaps just expecting too much from giant bureaucracies?
How do you mean?
Well, think about how massive the U.S. government is.
Right.
When you have hundreds of thousands of people passing information up a chain of command, from a private in the desert to a lieutenant to a general to a cabinet secretary, are they intentionally, maliciously lying to the public?
Or are they just playing a massive, tragic game of bureaucratic telephone?
Exactly. People cover their own rears, they massage the data slightly to please their boss, and by the time it reaches the top, the truth is just completely distorted. I mean, incompetence feels a lot more common than a grand, evil conspiracy.
You're highlighting the classic debate between malice and incompetence there. And, in a sociology classroom, that's a very valid distinction.
Right.
The problem is, from the perspective of the soldier on the ground or the citizen paying the taxes and suffering the inflation, the intent almost doesn't matter when the outcome is identical.
Oh, that's a really good point.
Yeah, if a bureaucratic game of telephone leads to a 20-year war and thousands of casualties, telling the veteran, well, it wasn't malicious, we just filed the paperwork wrong, that doesn't heal the trauma.
No, it doesn't at all.
The systemic failure operates as if it were malicious, and that outcome breeds the exact same level of distrust.
And that makes total sense when you frame it around the outcome. It actually reminds me of the pursuit of classified knowledge itself. It's like eating from the tree of knowledge. Well, the more you peek behind the curtain, the more agitated you become. The knowledge doesn't bring you any sort of peace. It brings torment. You realize the adults aren't in charge. Or worse, the adults are actively steering the ship into the rocks.
And that realization sets a hidden trap. Because having lost his faith in the government and the military to fix the world, Shawn Ryan decided he was going to do it himself.
Right. He pivoted his massive podcast platform to expose societal evils directly. He basically transitioned from a physical operator to a digital crusader.
And he went all in. He became incredibly focused on protecting kids.
Yeah, there is a specific expose discussed in The Source where he went after the gaming platform Roblox.
Oh, the Roblox investigation. That was huge.
It was massive. He uncovered how the platform was allegedly being used for child exploitation, and the real-world impact was just staggering.
Didn't it tank their stock?
Yes. His investigative work successfully wiped an estimated $5 to $6 billion off the company's market cap in a single week.
That is just, we should look at how a podcast can cause a multi-billion-dollar market fluctuation. It's not just the individuals start playing the game.
Right, it's the institutional investors.
Exactly. Pension funds, massive hedge funds, they use algorithmic sentiment trackers. When a massive platform like Ryan's drops a highly credible, deeply damaging expose regarding child safety, those algorithms flag severe liability risk.
And the institutional money just pulls out instantly. to avoid being associated with the scandal. It is an incredible demonstration of digital leverage.
It's immense power, but here's where Ryan reveals a terrifying paradox about exposing evil.
Yeah, he tells Carlson this profound realization he had during this crusade. It is, and this is a quote, "It's not the criticism that destroys you, it's the flattery."
That is a brilliant psychological insight, and it goes against, well, everything we assume about internet fame.
Right. We constantly talk about cyberbullying, trolls, and how negative comments destroy a creator's mental health.
But flattery is a much more insidious poison. When you are criticized, your ego throws up shields. You defend yourself.
Yeah, you dig your heels in.
Exactly. But when you are flattered, your ego just absorbs it completely.
And as Ryan went viral for exposing this corporate corruption, he became completely addicted to the algorithmic praise.
The millions of views, the likes, the endless comments telling him he was a hero.
People were literally telling him he was doing God's work. And you can see how he was captured by his own audience.
This is exactly how the dopamine feedback loop of modern media functions. The algorithm doesn't care about truth, it cares about engagement.
And outrage is the highest form of engagement, right?
100%. So to keep that dopamine flowing, to keep the praise coming, the creator must constantly find the next, bigger outrage to feed the audience.
Ryan actually mentions feeling this immense pressure to constantly pivot to the next hot-button issue, whether it was Elon Musk's Neuralink, the conflict in Israel, or Donald Trump.
Your entire identity and ego become tethered to finding the worst things happening on planet Earth.
It's like adopting a dragon as a pet. At first it's cool, but eventually the dragon demands more food than you can provide.
That's a great way to put it.
To explain this trap, Ryan shares this incredible story he heard from a Catholic priest in Maine. It's based on the biblical parable of the weeds and the wheat.
Oh, I love this analogy.
It's so good. So the analogy compares humanity to a field. The good people, the productive people, they are the wheat. The bad, destructive people are the weeds.
Right. But the twist the priest offered is what makes it relevant to internet culture.
Exactly. The twist is that sometimes a weed makes an entire career out of loudly calling out all the other weeds in the field.
The weed becomes so obsessed with pointing out everyone else's flaws that it totally fails to realize it is still, in fact, a weed itself.
It is a devastatingly accurate description of internet call-out culture.
It really is. In psychology, Carl Jung called this shadow projection. We all have a shadow, the dark, flawed, selfish parts of ourselves that we just don't want to admit exist.
So true.
Instead of doing the hard work of fixing our own flaws, it is neurologically much easier to project those flaws onto someone else and attack them for it.
It gives us a rush of righteous dopamine without requiring any actual personal growth.
Exactly.
Think about it for a second. To you listening right now, when you argue with someone online, or even just have a heated argument in your own head while you're driving, do you ever stop and realize you're often guilty of the exact behavior you're accusing them of?
Oh, we all do it. You're screaming at someone for being intolerant, and in doing so, your tone is completely intolerant.
Right. You're attacking someone for being cruel, and you are using cruel words to do it.
For Shawn Ryan, recognizing this was the moment of absolute synthesis, he realized he was trying to single-handedly fix global evil, all while carrying an inflated ego.
Yeah, feeling important because he had access to high-profile politicians and simultaneously feeling like he was missing his own children growing up.
He was getting wrapped up in the exact same narcissistic matrix he was actively trying to destroy.
So picture his mental state at this point. He's carrying all this rage from his military days, this hyper-awareness of horrific global corruption, and this bloated, audience-captured ego.
The pressure has to be crushing him.
Completely crushing him. He is desperate for a quick fix or a mental reset to clear the slate. So he turns to a really extreme underground method.
Right. He utilizes psychedelics, specifically a highly potent compound known as 5-MeO-DMT.
Okay, we definitely need to clarify what this is because this isn't like eating some mushrooms at a music festival.
Not at all. 5-MeO-DMT is often referred to as the God molecule. It is historically derived from the venom of the Sonoran desert toad, though it can be synthesized in a lab now.
And what does it actually do to the brain?
From a pharmacological standpoint, when it's smoked or vaporized, it bypasses the blood-brain barrier almost instantly. It just floods the serotonin receptors and completely shuts down the brain's default mode network.
The default mode network, that's the part of the brain responsible for our sense of self, right? Like the narrator in our heads.
Exactly. It is where your ego lives. It's the part of your brain that remembers your name, your job, your traumas, your social standing, everything that makes you, you.
Got it.
When 5-MeO-DMT shuts that down, users typically experience total ego dissolution. For many people in clinical psychedelic therapy, this results in a feeling of boundless love.
Like a deep connection to the universe.
Yeah, and a complete reset of depressive neural pathways.
But that is absolutely not what happened to Shawn Ryan. The narrative here takes a really, really dark turn.
Yeah, he doesn't describe this trip as some beautiful, mystical awakening where he communes with nature.
No. He describes it as a journey straight to hell.
And he is highly specific that this wasn't a cartoonish hell. There were no pitchforks, no walls of fire, no demons with horns poking him.
It was purely a feeling. He describes it as unimaginable agony, torture, and above all, profound, terrifying aloneness.
Just absolute isolation.
Yes, it was the total absence of connection to anything good, anything human, or anything divine. Just infinite, dark isolation. It shook him so deeply that even recalling it during the conversation with Carlson, you could hear him getting genuinely emotional.
I mean, how does someone even process and experience that traumatic? If you take a drug hoping for enlightenment and you get solitary confinement in a spiritual void, how do you integrate that into your daily life without completely breaking down?
Well, he integrates it using this incredibly powerful analogy of a father and an electrical socket.
Let's hear it.
Okay, imagine a toddler who is completely obsessed with sticking his finger in a wall socket. The dad keeps saying no. He puts those little plastic covers over it. He gives the kid timeouts. But the kid is just relentless.
Right. Toddlers don't always listen to reason.
Exactly. So eventually, if the kid won't listen, the father might just take the plastic cover off, stand right there, and let the kid touch it to get a small shock.
Not enough to kill him, obviously.
Right. Not enough to cause permanent damage, but enough so the kid learns in his absolute bones never to touch that socket again.
That is a profound psychological mechanism of extreme negative reinforcement.
Yeah. And Ryan believes God is that father. He believes God allowed him to feel this terror, this momentary glimpse of pure hell, so he would stop playing around in forbidden spiritual realms.
So he would stop relying on his own ego and stop searching for quick chemical shortcuts to enlightenment.
And it worked. It completely worked. It catalyzed a massive existential pivot in his life.
He realized the shortcut was actually a trap. I mean, the idea that you can smoke a compound and instantly achieve the wisdom of a monk who has meditated for 40 years is just an illusion of modern convenience.
The pivot was total. He immediately returned to his roots in the Catholic Church. He tells Carlson he now attends Mass 3 to 4 times a week.
Wow, that's a huge shift.
He brings his toddlers with him for one-on-one time before work. And he's planning to launch this massive serialized study of the Bible on his podcast.
With top theologians, right?
Yeah, partnering with top theologians to go through it chronologically, starting literally at the beginning with Genesis. He is throwing out the playbook of algorithmic political outrage and replacing it with the foundational texts of Western civilization.
Now, a skeptic listening to this, perhaps someone with a strictly materialist worldview, might look at the sequence of events and say, okay, this is easily explainable.
Oh, sure. They'd say he had a ton of repressed trauma. He took the most powerful hallucinogen on Earth. He had a predictably bad chemical reaction.
Right. He got scared, and he sought the comfort of his childhood religion. A purely psychological reaction, nothing supernatural about it.
And I would normally agree with that skeptic. But this brings us to the Sedona convergence. Because right after the psychedelic experience, Ryan went on a vacation to Sedona, Arizona.
And this is where things get really weird.
Oh, completely. Because to prove to himself that his awakening wasn't just an isolated drug-induced panic, a string of highly specific, seemingly unexplainable events occurred.
Events that completely shattered the barrier between his internal anxiety and the external world.
Yeah. But the context of his mental state during this Sedona trip is crucial. You have to understand the pressure cooker he was in.
He is completely stressed out at this point, right?
Beyond stressed. He is actively investigating child exploitation rings online. Simultaneously, the Chinese spy balloon is dominating the news cycle, traversing the entire U.S. airspace.
Which is making him feel like the country's defenses are a joke.
Exactly. On top of that, the media is starting to introduce terms like MAPs, minor attracted persons, trying to rebrand terrible things into clinical language, which is just infuriating him.
He is literally carrying the weight of all the world's evils on his shoulders, so he tries to relax.
Right. He tries to smoke a joint and takes his wife on a hike to one of Sedona's famous energy vortexes just to clear his head.
And for those unfamiliar, Sedona is famous for these supposed electromagnetic vortexes where people claim to feel intense spiritual energy, healing, and clarity.
Yeah. But Ryan feels absolutely nothing from the vortex. Instead, he just feels internal turmoil boiling over. He is walking around this beautiful red rock landscape, literally questioning his own sanity.
He's wondering if he is the crazy one for caring so much about all this evil, while everyone else at the resort seems completely fine just drinking their margaritas.
Exactly. He is at his most vulnerable, teetering on the edge of a total breakdown of his reality. And then the sequence begins.
Within a span of 15 minutes, 3 distinct events occur that completely defy statistical probability.
Okay, let's walk through it. Event number 1. They finish the hike, frustrated, and return to their highly secure resort. There's a random older security guard working the gate.
And Ryan is just exhausted, right?
Totally. He's giving the guy the cold shoulder, just staring straight ahead, wanting to go to his room. But his wife, being friendly, stops to chat with the guard.
As wives often do in those situations.
Right. So after a minute, Ryan feels bad and turns around to engage. And the moment he does, this old guard looks right at him, bypasses the small talk entirely, and accurately reads his internal monologue.
What did he say?
The guard says, point blank, all this crap that's going on with the kids, that's not your fight. And then, completely unprompted, the guard specifically mentions the Chinese spy balloon.
Think about the mechanics of that. Ryan hasn't spoken a word to this man. He is a stranger at a resort gate. Yet the guard identifies the exact 2 geopolitical and societal issues that were torturing Ryan's mind on the mountain.
It's unbelievable.
This is what Carl Jung would call a profound synchronicity. It's a causal connecting principle, where an internal psychological state is perfectly mirrored by an external physical event.
It shatters the illusion that we were isolated from our environment. Ryan is completely mind-blown. But it doesn't stop. Event number 2 happens.
The doppelganger.
Yes. Throughout this entire trip in Sedona, Ryan repeatedly spots a man who is the identical twin of his deceased best friend, a guy named Gabe.
We need to know who Gabe was to understand why this matters.
Okay, so Gabe was a former pro hockey player who became a CIA enforcer. He was known to everyone in their circle as a protector. He was the giant guy who watched your back in the most dangerous places on Earth.
And this doppelganger is everywhere in Sedona.
Everywhere. Ryan sees him at the restaurant, on the hiking trail, at the resort pool. He never interacts, just silently watches over Ryan and his wife all week.
Now, human beings are pattern-seeking machines, right? Under extreme stress, our facial recognition software can misfire. We see the faces we want to see.
Sure, that's the logical explanation.
But as a highly trained intelligence contractor, Ryan notes he was actively looking for surveillance. He knows how to spot a tail.
Right. He insists this wasn't someone following them. The guy wasn't behaving like a spy. It was just a bizarre, constant protective presence that happened to look exactly like the one guy Ryan trusted to protect him. It's just so eerie. So he's reeling from the mind-reading guard and the doppelganger. They finally get back to their private bungalow. The door shuts, and Ryan just breaks down.
The pressure finally gets to him.
Yeah, he starts crying, looking at his wife, asking what in the world is happening to him. And right at that exact moment, event number 3, his phone dings.
A text message.
Yes. It's a text from the daughter of another deceased friend, a man named Dan Cirillo, who had recently died in a tragic accident on a hunting trip with his son.
The timing of that is just impeccable.
It gets crazier. This daughter didn't even have Ryan's phone number. She had to track it down through mutual contacts just to send this text.
What did the text say?
She is relaying a message. She tells Ryan she had just walked into her late father's gun room and the room felt alive. Like, and this is a quote, invisible stars bouncing off the walls.
Wow.
She said she felt her father's spirit compelling her to reach out to Ryan immediately. The message she was supposed to deliver was simple. Dan loved him exactly as he was.
Let's just unpack the emotional payload of that specific text message.
Please do.
You have a man who has built his entire identity on fighting. Fighting insurgents in the desert, fighting corruption online, fighting his own demons. He feels fundamentally inadequate, paranoid, and exhausted.
He thinks he has to save the world just to be a good person.
Exactly. And he receives a message from beyond the grave, from a respected peer, saying he is loved exactly as he is. It dismantles his entire defensive armor in 1 second. He doesn't need to win a war to be worthy.
His wife's reaction to all of this chaos is what really brought it home for me. She watches him read this text and break down, and she tells him gently, God's always talking to you. You just don't make the room to let him in.
That sentence is the core thesis of this entire phenomenon.
It really is.
We are so saturated with digital noise, political outrage, and algorithmic flattery that the signal, whether you call it God, intuition, or the universe, simply cannot reach us. Our bandwidth is completely maxed out by garbage.
And this leads to an absolute mind-blowing realization from their conversation regarding our smartphones. We talked earlier about the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the book of Genesis.
Right. Adam and Eve were cast out of paradise for eating the fruit. They couldn't handle the burden of knowing everything.
And Tucker Carlson points out, what is the logo on the back of the device that we stare at all day? The device that feeds us all the knowledge, all the suffering, and all the outrage of the entire world.
It is an apple with a bite taken out of it.
I mean, when you hear that, it just stops you in your tracks.
When you look at it through that symbolic, mythological lens, it is chilling. It forces us to ask a terrifying question. How is our constant voluntary digital connection deafening us to our own intuition?
We literally hold the tree of knowledge in our hands every waking second. And statistically, it is making us more miserable, more anxious, and more divided than at any point in modern history.
It's an incredible micro-level realization about the individual soul. But what's interesting is, while Ryan is completely focused on this internal spiritual salvation, the conversation pivots.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson zooms way out and introduces a massive macro-level theory about the fate of the entire United States.
Carlson shifts the lens from the death of the ego to the death of an empire. And to do this, he relies on a very specific historical comparison regarding how superpowers fall.
Right. He outlines the anatomy of a fallen empire by contrasting the soft landings of the UK and Germany after World War II with the hard landing of the USSR in 1991.
To impartially unpack this worldview, because it is a controversial one, we really have to look at how Carlson defines the survival of a nation.
How does he define it?
To him, a nation's health is not measured by its gross domestic product. It's not measured by who occupies the White House or the size of its military budget. To him, a nation is entirely defined by cultural coherence.
Okay, so does the population share a history, a language, and a common set of values?
Exactly. So let's look at his examples. He argues that the UK endured a soft landing as their global empire collapsed post-World War II.
Yeah, they had 10 years of grueling food rationing. They lost India and all their global territories.
But their financial systems, their legal courts, and their property rights remained mostly intact. You didn't lose your house just because the empire shrunk.
But Carlson argues that in the long run, this soft landing masked a fatal blow, because while their banks survived, they lost their coherent national identity.
He argues they were subtly convinced to abandon their shared spirit and history, replacing it with a modernized, globalized identity that hollowed out the core of what it meant to be British.
And he makes a similar point about Germany. Split in half, rebuilt by foreign powers with the Marshall Plan. Financially successful, but culturally severed from its roots.
But then he points to Russia's collapse in 1991. That was a complete hard landing. It was absolutely brutal.
So the 1990s in Russia were catastrophic. You had a decade of literal mafia rule. State assets were plundered by oligarchs in broad daylight.
Lawlessness was rampant, and male life expectancy plummeted drastically. It was the complete collapse of a superpower overnight.
But in Carlson's analysis, because the Russian people maintained a deeply shared cultural identity, a deep, unshakable sense of what it means to be Russian, rooted in their literature, their Orthodox faith, and their history of enduring suffering, they were able to eventually recover.
They retained their self-respect as a distinct people. He argues that the Western empires, despite their financial wealth, have been systematically convinced to hate themselves and their own histories.
And to illustrate this fear of a loss of national identity, he shares a very striking, tangible anecdote.
Oh, the factory story.
Yeah. He talks about a close friend who runs a major industrial factory in the American Midwest. This specific state has essentially zero unemployment. Everyone who wants a job has one.
But the employer literally cannot find enough English-speaking workers to safely staff the factory floor.
And we should clarify, this isn't just about cultural preference, it's a massive safety issue.
Exactly. Heavy industrial manufacturing requires intense safety regulations. If a machine malfunctions, you need to be able to shout a warning across the floor and know that every single person instantly understands you.
If the labor pool doesn't share a common language, the factory becomes a deadly hazard.
Carlson notes it's gotten so bad that a competitor in the exact same area actually had to go out of business entirely because they couldn't safely staff their lines.
The argument being presented here is that a nation ceases to exist as a functional entity when it no longer shares a common language, history, and basic cultural assumptions.
The factory anecdote is used as a microcosm to argue that the American empire is hollowing out from the inside.
Right. The structure is still there, but the foundational culture that keeps the machines running safely is dissolving.
It's a very doom-laden macro-level perspective. It essentially says the collapse isn't coming, it's already here, and we are just arguing over the aesthetics of the rubble.
But what is so fascinating to me is Shawn Ryan's response to this immense geopolitical doom. Tucker lays out this terrifying theory of national collapse, and Ryan doesn't offer a political fix at all.
He doesn't take the bait.
No. He doesn't say, therefore, we need to elect this person or we need to pass this strict immigration law. He basically says that the only solution left is to tune out the noise, focus on your immediate family, and simply be the person you want everybody else to be.
It is the ultimate rejection of the external world. He is essentially saying the ship might be sinking and the captains might be corrupt, so the only thing I control is how I behave on the deck.
It's a return to profound, localized personal responsibility. If you want a moral country, you have to start by being a moral neighbor.
And to actually become that better person, Ryan realized he couldn't just rely on good intentions. He had to physically and digitally alter his environment.
He had to sever his ties to the digital matrix and to his own modern vices.
Which highlights a fascinating shift happening right now among global war on terror veterans.
I've noticed this too.
Yeah, we are seeing a generation of men who spent decades engaged in the most intense, kinetic, physical warfare imaginable. They were trained to solve problems with violence and strategy.
And now they are realizing that the physical fight, especially the current global conflicts, which they largely view as being fought for foreign interests and corporate defense contracts, is entirely empty.
Right, they are pivoting en masse to what they call spiritual warfare. They are trading their rifles for theology.
And for Ryan, the first step in engaging in this spiritual warfare was achieving total sobriety. He quit alcohol 4 years ago, but recently he took it to the extreme.
He dropped everything. No weed, no caffeine, no nicotine.
That is a radical, almost monastic detox.
It really is. Think about the mechanics of emotional suppression. Most of us use small daily vices as armor.
Yeah, we use caffeine to hype ourselves up and ignore exhaustion. We use nicotine to forcibly steady our nerves when we are anxious.
And we use alcohol or weed at the end of the day to numb the stress and just shut our brains off.
So when you strip all of those chemical modifiers away, you are left completely exposed to your own baseline reality.
Ryan admits that without these substances to mask the rage and the trauma, he is forced to actually feel his raw emotions for the first time in 20 years.
When he reads a text message from a deceased friend's daughter, he doesn't pour a drink to numb the intensity. He actually allows himself to weep.
The sobriety isn't about being puritanical, it's about removing the calluses from his soul so he can actually feel things again.
But the unplugging wasn't just chemical. It was fundamentally digital. He explicitly states he refuses to look at his social media metrics anymore.
He doesn't look at view counts. He doesn't read the comments.
He deliberately cut off the supply of the algorithmic flattery that we discussed earlier. He is starving the dragon.
But his digital unplugging goes way beyond just ignoring Instagram comments. As his podcast gained massive influence, his paranoia understandably spiked.
And he had a very real reason to be paranoid. His platform is huge. There is a moment where they mention that an interview Ryan did with Pete Hegseth seemingly influenced Hegseth's nomination for Secretary of Defense just 5 days later.
When your podcast has the ear of the highest levels of government and the military-industrial complex, you have to start wondering who else is listening to your phone calls.
Which brings us to the practical and deeply paranoid side of this transition. Ryan partnered to create a consumer version of an incredibly secure app called Glacier.
Okay, we have to talk about how the Glacier ecosystem works because it highlights just how compromised our normal tech is.
Originally, Glacier was a physical device. It was a $10,000 phone with an exorbitantly expensive service plan, used exclusively by Tier 1 military units and high-level intelligence agencies.
It had features that could literally scramble, delete, and replace your digital footprint internationally. You couldn't be tracked.
So Ryan helped develop an app version for the general public. It gives you burner phone numbers on demand, so you never have to hand your real permanent phone number to a political campaign, a hotel, or an online retailer.
It actively blocks hundreds of hidden web trackers that scrape your data daily. And most importantly, it acts as a secure, American-owned VPN.
Let's explain why that VPN detail is so critical. A lot of people use free or cheap VPNs, thinking they're protecting their privacy.
That is one of the greatest illusions of the modern internet. Running server farms to route VPN traffic is incredibly expensive.
Right, so if a company is offering you a free VPN, you are not the customer, you are the product.
Many popular VPNs are actually foreign-owned data traps. They route your data through their servers, encrypt it from your internet service provider, but then they harvest everything you do.
Your passwords, your browsing habits, your location data, and they sell it to data brokers or foreign intelligence operations.
The very tool you're using to hide is the net catching you. Glacier is his attempt to build a verified digital fortress against that.
But I have to point out the incredible irony here. I was laughing about this while absorbing their conversation.
What's that?
Here we have a deep, profound, 2-hour conversation about the existence of hell, the fall of Western empires, the deep trauma of war, and literal spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
And it is interspersed with standard podcast ad reads. Right in the middle of discussing the apocalypse, they pause to sell nasal sprays, non-toxic body washes, and beef tallow bars.
It perfectly encapsulates the ultimate paradox of modern media and the human condition.
It's so funny, but also so true.
You are seeking profound spiritual enlightenment. You are trying to detach from the toxic system, but you are still forced to navigate the realities of the capitalist marketplace. You have to feed your family.
You are selling a tool to hide from the digital world, and you are using a massive digital broadcast to market it.
It highlights the friction of trying to live a monastic, spiritually pure life while still having to pay a mortgage in the 21st century. We are all trapped in the contradiction.
We really are. So what does this all mean? Let's synthesize this wild journey we've been on today. We started with a military operator who spent his life hunting physical enemies in the desert, believing he was on the side of absolute good.
Then, disillusioned by the lies and failures of those institutions, he pivoted to become a digital crusader, hunting political and corporate corruption online.
But he realized the digital crusade was just another trap, feeding his ego while isolating him from reality.
Exactly. He finally reached a breaking point. Through a terrifying psychedelic experience and a series of unexplainable synchronicities in the desert, he realized something profound.
That the most dangerous battles aren't happening in the Middle East, and they aren't happening in Washington, D.C. They are happening inside his own head and on his smartphone screen.
He climbed the mountain of military elite status and found the summit was hollow. He climbed the mountain of digital fame and algorithmic influence and found the air up there was toxic.
Now he is entirely focused on the internal ascent. He is cleansing his own house before trying to fix the world.
So true.
So I want to turn this directly to you listening right now. Where are you placing your faith? Are you outsourcing your peace of mind to a politician who doesn't know you exist?
Are you trusting an institution that views you merely as a statistical data point?
Or are you handing your emotional baseline over to an algorithmic echo chamber that literally profits off your daily anger? Are you spending your life loudly calling out the weeds in the field while refusing to look at your own roots?
I want to leave you with a thought that builds on everything we've uncovered today. Look at the people who have the highest security clearances in the world.
Yeah, think about that.
If the most elite, highly trained intelligence operators, men who are explicitly trained by the government to identify and neutralize global threats, are systematically unplugging from the digital grid, blocking their data, abandoning political outrage, and turning their focus completely inward towards spiritual silence.
What do they know about the future of our digital society that the rest of us are simply too distracted to see?
Are we all just staring at the apple, taking another bite of the outrage while the world burns down around us?
It makes you wonder if the only way to truly win the modern game is simply to refuse to play it.